This conference will now be recorded.
So yesterday we covered the topic till fundamentals of the testing and why testing is necessary, what is testing, and the brief intro with all the information about the testing part. Okay, so today we'll be continuing our session with software testing principles. Okay, yeah. So today's topics that I've planned for discussion is testing principles, what is an SDLC, and what are all the different SDLC phases. Okay, so as per the ISTQB standards, so there are 7 testing principles that every tester should know about it, what exactly it means to. Okay, I think it's good to know. So what I mean, what exactly? So no one will very in deeply explain about all these testing principles, but we should know. So if there are any situations arrays or like anything that we should be in a position not in a position to tackle, then we can just go through these testing principles, what exactly it is describing about as per ISTQB standards. Okay, so these are all the 7 testing principles. Like testing shows the presence of bugs, exhaustive testing is impossible, early testing, defect clustering, the pesticide paradox, testing is context dependent, absence of errors is fallacy. So by looking at these headings, so do you know or do you have any information about each of these testing principle just by the name looking at, so what does it mean? So any guesses from the team? Let's start from testing shows the presence of defects. So what does it mean?
So we conduct a testing in order to find out bugs.
Okay. Okay, so the main focus or the main goal of the testing is to make the software fail. So it means that the sufficient testing reduces the presence of the defects. So in case any testers are unable to find the defects after repeated regression testing, doesn't mean that the software is bug free. Do you agree with the statement?
Yes.
Yeah. So how rigorously as a tester you will be able to perform the testing, still there is a chances of presence of the defects in the application. So you can do regression testing, you can do retesting, and you can do ad hoc, exploratory, whatever the testing types that are applied at the time of testing an application. But still we can't give 100% assurance to anyone, even to the client, that your software or a tested software or tested application, still there is a possibility for presence of the bugs, because our as a tester our main goal is to do the make the software fail. Okay, so I mean with respect to any point of time there might be chances of 1 to 10% of the existence of the defects. So that is the testing principle, which is talking about testing shows the presence of the bugs. Am I clear with the first testing principle, or any further explanation is required?
No, it's
Okay. And the second testing principle is exhaustive testing is impossible. So as I just mentioned, any type of combinations or any valid input or any invalid input you might have applied while you're doing it testing, but even then the complete testing is not possible to test any of the software system or any of the application. You can do, or you can put your 100% efforts to finish out with your testing with all the possible combinations or whatever the scenarios that team have prepared, anything, even though the exhaustive testing is impossible. So why it is impossible? Any idea or any thoughts around it?
I think we cannot cover 100% coverage.
Okay, so any examples for the better understanding?
I mean, how many cases or how many scenarios if we cover also? So there might be some paths where we cannot cover, ma'am, actually.
Yeah, so just to elaborate, yeah, and I agree with the point, Santosh. So just to elaborate more on it, let's assume in an application there is an input field. So that input field or any of the text field, and as per the business requirement, it should accept a range from 200 to 400. Okay, so would you be able to start doing from 200, 300, 400 range till the testing is completed? Do you have that enough time to complete and focus only on one input field throughout the application?
No.
So obviously no. So that's the reason we are utilizing the testing technique concepts which are available in the uh, manual testing. So by using those testing techniques, like as an example, boundary value analysis or equivalence class partition, we will try to define our test data. So based on our defined test data, we will perform our testing. So that is where the exhaustive testing is impossible.
Yes.
Okay. And any further queries with the second testing principle? Shall I go to early testing?
Exhaustive testing means like we cannot cover many of the things.
Exactly. So as I mentioned, with a simple example, if there is a input field, it should accept only the characters or numbers between 1 to 100. You cannot really test like enter 1 and then test it, enter 2 and then test it, enter 50 and then test it, so on. So you can't completely focus your testing only on one input field throughout the application.
Yes.
Okay, so that is where you need to apply your testing techniques to define your test data, like equivalence class partitioning and boundary value analysis. So with respect to the boundary value analysis, so we know that what is the range, like a 1 to 100. So you can take the boundaries like a 1 to 100 and the middle range, so 50. So with only three inputs, you'll finish it up your testing of that particular input field or a text field. So you should not more cautious or more concentrated only on a single input. So if you are keep trying doing only the testing for a one single input field or text field, what about the remaining fields? So you can't really perform your testing, right? So that is all about the exhaustive testing. Okay, so let's move on to the early testing. So what is an early testing? Any guesses or any idea about what is an early testing?
I mean, testing the software at the early stages. So as soon as the development is completed, so we need to work on that module which is completed.
Mm, so agree. So what is the benefit around it? So why should
So
we
I
prefer to
mean,
go for
we
early
can
testing?
find out the defects early, and we can ask the developers to fix as soon as possible. Because if we are waiting until whole software is getting completed, so if there are more bugs, so there will be dependent modules also in that. So that is why each and every module which is tested as soon as possible. So we need to test that.
Okay, so let's assume that I completely agree with the point. But what is the benefit out of it? What, because definitely it's not gonna benefit to the tester, or it's not gonna benefit to the developer. So it definitely benefit to the customer or a client, whomever we are serving for. Agree? So that is the reason. So early testing, it means that at the even starting from at the time of requirement gathering. So I mean, we decided that we are gonna build this software or application for the client, so and so client, and it might be having a set of requirements. Okay, you start go through all the requirement, and if you try to identify any flaws in it or any deviations or observations from your point, if you can let the customer or a developers know, so that changing of the requirement is more easy than that of finding an issue after the development. So if you have identified an incorrect requirement, it's just the matter of change in the requirement. But what if in case the defect got identified at the pre-production, like at the time of production. So it again, there is a change in the requirement, again a CR change in the requirement have to be created. Again the process is a new, and the initiation is a new. Again, everyone should rework on it. So instead, if we start identifying as early as possible all the issues starting from requirement gathering or requirement collection, then it is very benefit to the customer as well as to the dev and QA.
Yes.
Okay, so if you have no further queries on early testing, let's move on to the defect clustering. So by the name, or by looking at the name defect clustering, so what do you think about it? What is the defect clustering?
And, small modules might be having more number of bugs. I mean, we
Okay.
need to cluster.
Okay. So what you would like to cluster here?
Uh, Defects, ma'am, defects. I mean, we
Okay.
need to identify more number of defects in a small module, which results in the failure of application.
Okay. So the defect clustering actually mainly follows the Pareto principle. It is nothing but 80 to 20 rule based. It means that 80% of the issues or defects will definitely comes from the modules which are created early, like a 20% of the modules, and then based on that, even if the modules got integrated or anything, the chances of arising of the defects is only 20%. Okay, so that is all about the defect clustering. So let's move on to the pesticide paradox. So what is the pesticide paradox? Just by looking at the name, what is the pesticide paradox?
So I heard like if you are testing the application with the same set of test cases, so there will be no result. We need to update the test cases with either with the test data, or we need to write more test cases.
Okay. Only with the test data specific we need to update, or any other way that we need to
New
change
test
it?
cases.
Okay, exactly. So by the name pesticide, let's assume if you try to use the same pesticide for the crop that you are taking care, definitely it's not gonna happen, or there is no further use of the pesticide that you are using very frequently. In the same manner, in testing, let's assume at the time of initiation of the test, you might have came up with some sort of regression suite that you are defined for the repetitive testing after each and every release or each and every sprint. Okay, and you started using it from sprint 0 or sprint from, and even after sprint 10 also you are still using it. But we need to think of it, what is the use of using the regression testing. So the main use of using the regression test suite or test cases is to identify the more bugs. So if you are not in a situation to identify the more bugs from the existing regression to suite, definitely it's a indication or a symptom that we need to modify the existing regression suite there. Okay, because there is of no use of identifying any new bugs, then obviously a change is required for the existing regression suite. So it means that a regular review or regular updates are required for the existing test cases or to the existing regression suites that we decided to use it, because after certain period your application might be stable, so there are no clue for the defects that identified, and the chances of arising of a defects is also very less, not very less, it's at some level it will be completely zero. So that time we should think and we should update the existing regression suite. So that is all about the pesticide paradox. So at a regular intervals, or as at a certain after every certain period, there is a change required for the test suite to identify more issues in the system. So is pesticide paradox is clear? Another testing principle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let's move on to the testing is context dependent. So what is context dependent here? What is the context?
Based on type of the application.
Mm-hmm.
So based upon the type of the application, we need to decide what type of testings we need to conduct.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the point. So let's assume, some people are working on health domain, some people are working on banking, and some people are working on some insurance domain. But your test plan will define what is your approach with respect to the testing. So what type of a testing is required for healthcare applications, what type of testing is required for insurance application. It means that testing is common, you might be applying all the test types that are required for your testing, but the approach might be different, how you need to follow your testing. That is all about the testing is context dependent. So you might be applied a different approach to the healthcare domain, and for insurance domain you might have applied a different approach. So that is where it might not, it might be same but it is not the same. So you
Mm,
should decide what sort of approach is suitable for which application or which system currently that you are decided to work.
okay.
Okay. And hope it's clear. And let's move on to the absence of error policy. What is the absence of error policy?
No idea.
Any guesses around it? Absence of errors policy.
I mean, we should not be more confident that errors are not available in any software.
Mhm. It's close, but not exactly. So, what is a fallacy? Fallacy is nothing but misbelief in general, right? So, what is a misbelief about absence of errors? Let's assume you are currently working on an application, and you did your best, and it's a zero defect. Assume it's a zero defect, but for an end user at the time of using an application, there is of no use, and he is not in a situation to use the application, though it is 100% error free. It means that, just in a simple words, it should fulfill the business needs, otherwise it will be unusable software. Though you tested, you did your best, and it is 100% error free, everything is done, but did you check, is it built as per the business needs and as per the end user requirement? Is the system which has been built or a software which has been developed is as per the end user acceptance?
Mm, yes.
Yeah, so it means that, just an example, in a real time, let's assume you might have downloaded a one of the banking application or a desktop application, but if it is working very super fast, no performance issues, no function issues, nothing you found it, but still the software which you opted to use is useless for you at that moment. So what is the end user perspective with that? So definitely, if it is a useless, it's not fulfilled his needs, and it's not based upon a business requirements which has been built. So that is where, though it is a complete 100% error free, so it's a misbelief that it might be useful to the user, and we should think in a such a way that whether this software is really useful for the end user and it is fulfilled all the business requirements or not.
Mm, yes.
Okay, so agree. So these are all the testing principles, and even not only here, we used to tell to the clients also that why it has been erased, why this issue is erased at UAT, or why it is erased at pre-prod. So we should confidently say that with this testing principles, because we understood we should always keep these principles in mind. Obviously, exhaustive testing is not impossible. Probably at the time of staging environment or a QA environment, what are the combinations of the test data that we have taken, that time the application is working fine. Probably in UAT or pre-prod, what are the different test data or a different test scenarios that they have chosen for testing might be causing an issues. So we should be more explanatory to them, because definitely once the code got deployed from QA to UAT, we gonna face multiple queries from them, why there is issues in UAT environment, why there is issues in pre-prod. So we should be in a position to answer to them by considering all these testing principles. So either or the other way, these will be helpful directly or indirectly. And we should know about these testing principles for sure. Okay, so any further queries on testing principles before moving to the uh, SDLC phases? Okay, I'll take the silence as no. And I think these slides, I will just provide a simple explanatory about each of the principle. And yeah, so this is the same. Is someone is saying?
No.
Okay. And you might have learned about Sdlc very long back in your graduation or post graduation. Some other way, you might have heard it. Software development life cycle. What is a software development life cycle?
I mean,
What did I?
the process that we follow in order to develop a particular software, the approach
Okay.
we follow.
So who is defining the process here?
Project manager.
Project manager. Okay. Only project manager will decide like a process. It will not be agreed by any customers or clients or
No,
stakeholders.
if requirements are changing, or if you would like to add more requests, so they probably go for agile methodology, or else if
Mhm.
the requirements are freezed, so and there is no changes further, so he will go for waterfall model. So I mean, project manager might decide this software development lifecycle, and he will send it to a client for the approval. So if the client is okay with that, I think further they will be proceeding with this
Okay.
development life.
Okay. Okay, let me elaborate furthermore. So absolutely whatever you mentioned is I agree with the point, but let's put it in a very formal way and elaborate more about SDLC. Okay, so
Yeah.
SDLC is, as I mentioned, software development life cycle. So for everything that is plan for a build or anything that is required a build, so first of all we will be planning in what way or what should be the process. So the process should be defined. So with the help of SDLC we are defining a specific process over here. So why should we require a specific process or a specific plan for to build any of the application? So this is in general, not only for any of the application, but in general for anything to be done in a real life, there should be some plan, right? So that according to that plan we will be following strictly to achieve the goals. Agree? So not only the software, anything in real time as well, there will be certain plan that we might have defined. Okay, so let's consider an example. Once you are done with your 10th standard, so you'll decide whether you need to go for a diploma or you need to stop your studies, or whether join plus two, or after plus two what is your goal, like whether you need to go for the graduation or a degree. So something like that, you might have a certain plan that will be defined for your life. In the same way, just to build any of the application, software application, there will be certain plan or procedure will be defined upfront. Based on that, the entire application will follow to achieve some sort of a deliverables or a goals here. So what is the plan here? So what is the process that we are going to define and what we are achieving it? So these three will completely decided by the SDLC process. Okay, but what is the process here? So the process is nothing but to build a software, and this is the approach that we decided to follow. Okay, so but what is the outcome of it? So what should be the outcome? So there will be certain deliverables to achieve it. So what is the deliverables? So the deliverables is a good software and a quality software, and that should fulfill all the business needs and customer needs, and that will be useful for the end user to use further. So this is my achievement or a deliverables, and this is the process that I've defined to follow. Okay, so as I mentioned over here, so these are all the things that a user can think of it. So it helps in project planning, the perfect project planning, and scheduling and estimations. So until unless you doesn't schedule your project and you haven't estimated your project properly, it's completely gone. So you might have estimated wrongly that I need 10 resources for the software to be built, but with the business requirements, it may take 20 resources. Gone. Scheduling is gone, estimation is gone. So you are very poor in project planning, and the outcome is not achievable. So definitely there is a pressure will be definitely on the project manager or sales guys who actually initiated this request. Gone. The complete project will be gone, and it will be to another stakeholder or the service providers. Okay, and in the process of defining this, we will be designing what sort of a framework. So just keep it in mind, framework. So what is a framework here? Any idea what is a framework here?
I mean, organizing the things, estimation and everything.
Mm, I think no. So what is a framework? So frame provides a framework for a standard set of activities and deliverables. So what is so framework is nothing but a kind of a skeleton structure we will decided to follow. Let's assume as an example with respect to application, I have a banking application. So my banking application structure should like a login, home page, open a new account, and maintenance of an account. So something like that, it have a set of different framework. But whereas for insurance, again I might be having a different framework. So it is nothing but a set of activities or a set of standards to be followed by defining a framework. So my application structure should be in this format. If it is an insurance, my application structure should be in this format. If it is a banking or if it is e-commerce, so something like that. So we are defining a framework structure for each and every application. Okay, and by defining a proper SDLC, you will be more cautious about your tracking and controlling of the application. So otherwise, we have assigned a work to the 10 developers, and we have a 5 testers in the team, and we decided, okay, just go ahead for 3 months of the work, and please come up with some outcome. So do you think the outcome will be good or bad or worst?
Not good.
So
First,
obviously, because it's lacking of tracking and lacking of control and lacking of monitoring. So that is where we should define who will be taking off which deliverable. So let's assume development architect will be taking care of all the deliverables from the development team, and test lead will taking care of all the deliverables from QA point of view. So that is where we should define, so who will be tracking what and who will be controlling which team. So that is where SDLs will be defined with a certain tracking and controlling process. Okay, and there are others as well, like the we can estimate what about the development speed, and obviously there might be very closely working with the clients or customers for we can maintain a good relation, and if there are any risks that we foresee, so upfront, we can be able to let the customers know, or management know, that this is the risk in the project because of lacking the control or lacking the tracking. So we need so and so project manager, or we required additional resources, so something like that. With the predefined process that we choose, and we can be able to estimate, or we can be able to foresee all this. So these are all, I can say, the benefits of the SDLC process which are being defined. Any queries over here with respect to what is an SDLC?
No.
Okay, Rita and Zahid, hope you are following me. Please stop if you guys have any further queries over here. Okay, and one more point I would like to include with respect to SDLCs, not only for the benefit of all these things, but we should be in a position to properly estimate the budget, as well as the proper definition of the which software model we decided to use. So everything, so the goal is clear. So we are defining the goal, and it will be clear. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So if you are clear with what is an SDLC, let's move on to the phases of SDLC. So before moving on to the next slide, so what do you think the phases of SDLC?
Requirement gathering,
Hmm.
analysis and design,
Okay. And
and
I mean, if you would have type in Google that what are all the SDLC phases. So some websites say six, some websites say seven, some websites say only four, some websites say only three. So it depends. So as I mentioned, it depends from organization to organization. It depends from project to project how they would like to define their own SDLC. But the process might be the same, but the phases might be different from one approach to the other approach. But ideally, just to start with SDLC phases, as Santosh mentioned, so we will be having requirement. So requirement analysis, I am considering here as a single phase, but other approaches might say that first phase is requirement gathering and the second phase is analysis. So something like that. So, but in general, from my end, I would like to call the requirement gathering analysis is a single phase, and designing is one phase, and implementation and coding is one phase. So testing is another phase, and deployment and maintenance of the project is another phase. Okay, so let's start from requirement gathering analysis. So why should we, because so before starting with phases of SDLC, now with what is SDLC, now we defined what exactly we needed. So this is our approach. So the approach is defined with respect to SDLC, but now how we need to implement that approach is all about SDLC phases. Okay, so the first phase I can call it as a requirement gathering and analysis. So what is a requirement gathering and analysis?
a requirement is what I mean the client is expecting. So whether we can do that or not. So whether it is, I mean whether we can develop this or not. So it is out of box or what. We will
Mm.
gather the things and analyze them.
Yeah. So
What is that?
yeah, I agree with the points. So we'll try to elaborate more, and let get to know about what is requirement gathering analysis. So let's assume let's assume take an Australian bank. So at the time of Australian bank, so everything is operational manually, but they want and they decided to operate their banking process as an online, because they want to work more closely with the customers or end users who are actually prefer to choose the Australian bank. Okay, so in that case, they want everything to be automated and everything to be available online for to increase their customers or whatever so and so reasons. So at that time, Australian bank they know what is their banking process and how it will work, but they want one software or application to work closely with their customers. So they approached so and so customer that we decided that as per the current trending market, so we decided to build our application in Java. So they'll just check for who is the best service provider. It's the purely decision by the client to choose the service providers. So they choose their own service provider and they approached. So once they approached and the project got decided and everything got okay, then they'll start discussing about the requirements. So hey boss, so this is my requirement and this is how I want the system to be implemented, and these are all my business requirements. So based on business requirement, I'm expecting the application to be in the same format. So then from the service providers, all the business architects, projects managers, so whomever is on the top heads, we can call it as, everyone will be have a kind of a kickoff meeting. So from the kickoff meeting, they'll start gathering all the requirements, and all the requirements will be documented properly as a business requirement document. Or there are different names altogether to it. You can call it as a business requirement document, or you can call it as a system requirement document, whatever, but finally it is a requirement document. So that requirement document will consist of all the business needs or business requirements which is been provided by our client. So it's nothing but a list of all the requirements in a simple way. Okay, and once the requirements are gathered properly, so business architects or project managers, they'll just review it once, and if there are any further information which is required, that will be, again, one back-to-back meetings will be happen between stakeholders to the service providers. So that is all about the requirement gathering and analysis. So any further queries on it, or anything more explanation is required? Okay. So let's move on to the next phase, that is the designing phase. So what is a design? So by the name, what do you think of designing phase?
I mean, making the architecture or blueprint, like
Mhm.
what should be developed first and which module should be developed first. Overall design of the software structure.
So the design, can we call it as an architecture of the application?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So with the requirements gathered, so all the architects, they'll just come to a design approach. It means that they'll be started designing the I can call this as a blueprint, or I can call it as a architecture. So it means that what should be the front layer, what should be the web service that very helpful to use within the application with the given requirement, and what is my database at the background. So what are all the different integration points that a Java application which is required to gather some information? See, let's assume as per the requirements, they said that as it is a banking application, they might be doing some bankruptcy, like user for any of the customer, they will just check for the fraudulent checks and bankruptcy checks and everything. So further, they might be already contacting the third-party systems. So that, I mean, if you're as we are building as per the business requirements, all this bankruptcy related information and fraudulent related information, that we need to get it from the other third-party systems. So that integrations also should be taken care as per the current application development. So that is where they'll come up with a complete design architecture or a system architecture based on the given requirements. So once the architecture is finalized, then they'll move on to the implementation of the application. So are we clear with the design phase, or any queries?
Fine. Yeah, high level design, low level design.
It depends. It depends. So high level designs is nothing but it's a kind of a complete blueprint. let's assume I can say in a simple word. So once you start, decided to construct any of the building, you'll have a blueprint, right? That might be the high level design. But once you started your construction, like what should be your interior and what should be your house looks like different segregations, that are a low level design. So it's a kind of a segregation in between. Okay, and so once the design is and architecture is finalized, so they will let the development team know that here this is the architecture that we decided. So let's start with coding it. So as at the time of approach itself, they decided that they need to go with like a Java application. So they need to go with Java application, right? So based on Java application, they'll start implementing the implementation is nothing but the coding. So they start coding the application. So based on approaches, whatever defined. But don't think I'm just discussing only about the phases, whether what is the model, software development model that they are using, that we will be discussing in the further sessions. Okay, just understand what is a specific phase is all about. Okay, what is the specific phase that they decided, but who will be involving and who will be involving at what phase and everything, that purely depends on development model to another development model. If it is a waterfall model, it will be different. If it is an agile model, it is a different. If it is something else like a hybrid, again it will be a different. But here you just try to concentrate and understand more about what is the specific phase is all about. That's it. Okay, so let's assume implementation coding is done, and they came up with a certain look and feel of the application, and they started developing each and every screen and different pages in the application. Then it will be given to the QA for testing. So you know what is this testing all about, and what we'll be concentrating on in the testing. Okay, and let's move on to the next phases of the application development lifecycle. Okay, it's a deployment. So once you decided to provide your sign off, let's from a QA point of view. So QA testing is done. I'm sorry for the background noise. So testing is completed. So once the testing is completed, once the QA have provided his sign off to the application, then the same will be deployed to the next applicable or next available phase. So that means that either it can be UAT or it can be pre-prod. Okay, it's purely depends upon which next available environment in the application or a process which has been defined. Okay, either it can be after development it to the QA, and it is to the QA and then to UAT and so on. So it's purely depends on how many environment sets that client would like to decide to follow. So based on that, the deployments will be happen. Okay, so and if this can be done to the prod directly as well, from pre-prod to prod. Okay, let's assume if it is the code has already been deployed to the production environment. Okay, now it is under the go live. Okay, what about the maintenance? You might have heard that there are plenty projects within the software industry are like maintenance projects, or even you can call it as a support projects. So what is meant by support projects? So nothing but for most of them, what as per as my experience, I can see that for banking projects or insurance kind of projects, right? So they need a further assistance. So the assistance can be, let's assume, based on initial requirements, the application is fine, it is developed as per the business needs, but maybe in the future they want to enhance the application, or what if in case there are issues found in the production, So that is where the maintenance or a support system or a support project comes into the picture. There they will have a set of the developers as well as the testers. They will group together and they can keep working on the same application years to years and years to years. So as I can say, so it means that the requirements are enhanced, or the business needs got enhanced, or for so and so reason, or they might have faced some issues. So whatever the issues that they are facing, you can think that it may affect the production life system, right? So that is where you need to think of it. Okay, so these are all about SDLC phases. Any queries on any of the SDLC phase? Okay, and I'm plan to stop it here for today. Probably by tomorrow, I'll start with, because we've got to know what is an SDLC and we have got to know what are the SDLC phases. But which model will adopt these phases and everything, what are the different models, and we plan to decide it to discuss by tomorrow. Okay, so if you have any further queries on this slides or any of the testing principles, please let me know. And if it is one-to-one, or even if you can contact admin, they can provide the email IDs accordingly. You can contact me. So that's all for
Okay.
today. Any queries from anyone? Rita, Zahid, Santosh?
No.
Okay. So thank
If
you
I
so
would
much.
like to get back to you with respect to the course, so do I need to contact to share it?
Yeah. Contact Isha. They'll provide with the proper email ID. Okay, I can reply to
Your
you.
email and your mobile number.
Yeah. They will let you know.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so much for your time. Let's wind up the session. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.
This conference will now be recorded.